I think it's time for some kind of fresh breakthrough.
I don't think I expected it to have that kind of vitality.
Relax. It's only a movie.
He's so close to the characters. It's so real.
48!
It's the turn-of-the-century innovation for motion pictures.
You will guard this information with your life.
I do believe it's important to have a special kind of experience in the theaters.
Douglas is a filmmaker. Absolutely everything that he's done is innovative. He's the most creative person I've worked for.
He saved me on Star Trek.
If there's a characteristic of Doug Trumbull's work, it is that it looks functional. In other words, it looks as everything has a certain believability about it, a certain credibility.
And been a great admirer in terms of how he's actually advanced the film industry in terms of his techniques, and he's always out there, you know, pushing out to do something new and different and fresh.
I've obviously been in special effects for many years, and I find it very challenging, and I've really enjoyed it. I think that the special effects end of making movies is one of the most challenging and stimulating and difficult aspects of film production.
We even did that on the spaceships at Close Encounter. We kept slowing them down as they went by.
We gotta go back to 1 and try it, but tell him to start at 40 and slow to 35 or 30 by the time he gets here.
Down the road a little more. Tip it up a little bit, please.
Let's shoot it.
The major thrust of my work historically in special effects and directorially, and particularly in Brainstorm, was to try to get closer and closer to what I think is a new form of cinema, a new medium, a new opportunity for everyone to say, okay, let's get rid of a lot of the old rules and let's try something new. Let's make this whole medium fresh and new and exciting.
You've blown communication as we've known it right out of the water. You know that, don't you? And I'm very proud of all of you. You blew my socks off.
I want to take people on experiences. I want people to come to a theater and have an experience that's as dramatically, emotionally, physically, physiologically powerful as something that would happen to them in real life.
I think the sequence in Brainstorm that I'm most proud of is Lillian's death sequence. But I think dramatically that scene is one of the most satisfying things I've ever done. I think James Horner's score for that scene is spectacular, and the combination of Louise Fletcher's performance, Dick Urisich's complex camera movements that are going on there, very complex lighting cues, special effects, lasers, video monitors are all going on, very complicated technical effects going on during a very difficult performance. And Louise Fletcher did that entire scene in one take. And when the take was over, everyone burst into applause and we went to dinner.
It's hard to compare Doug to anybody. He has a whole different sensibility. He thinks very abstractly, visually. I mean, on Brainstorm, I didn't see any of those sequences before I scored them. Doug would literally call me on the phone and explain them to me, and I would sort of close my eyes, and he would explain it, and he'd say after approximately 5 seconds, there's going to be a big thing of purple, etc., and this is going to come out of it. And a lot of the effects were written, I mean, I wrote it with my vision of what his vision was. I mean, I hadn't seen it. He hadn't even seen the finished effects.
You know, he's a wonderful artist.
I used to draw when I was a kid, a lot. And I think as a kid I won a couple of art shows at the LA County Fair or something when I was 7 years old or something. I can't remember, but my mother was an artist and my father was an engineer, and so I ended up getting a little bit of both. I think I had a lot of support for what I wanted to do, but I did draw a lot, and I made my little Super 8 movies.
One of the things I remember most was a setup we made on the swimming pool where we set up an 8mm camera so that it would stop motion the building of a swimming pool, and everything is just going crazy like this. And he had a great time. And then a couple of extra shots that he and a friend set up a board and rolled down a board in a barrel and climbed out of the barrel. Although it was all special effects. His first effort.
So I started illustrating and painting, and I got fascinated with the airbrush as a tool. But I did end up at graphic films, where Les Novros thought I had maybe some talents that they wanted, and gave me a job at graphic films, and I started doing airbrush background illustrations for these very high-tech simulations of the whole NASA space program. At graphic films, it's where we got the job to do the World's Fair for 1964 New York World's Fair. And it was the job we did at that World's Fair that Stanley Kubrick saw, and was very interested in space and was getting ready to do 2001. And so I was sort of in the right place at the right time, and that's how I got offered a job to work on 2001.
It was as though I'd gone to a special school set up for photography, and it was a wonderful experience in that sense.
I think working with Stanley Kubrick was the thing that just completely expanded my awareness and experience of film, based on his attitude and his philosophy. And in particular, the idea that on 2001, he was trying to create an experience for the audience. It wasn't a story with A, B, C, D. It wasn't people chasing each other around. It was a very cosmic idea. And it was a super Panavision, and the audience was going to go on this trip.
Stanley Kubrick is a great director, as well as a photographer. And Doug Trumbull's a great photographer and director, and that's why it was a special experience.
Well, things on the Universal lot really haven't changed a lot since 1970 when we made Silent Running here. But I think one of the major factors that led to Silent Running here at Universal was that a picture called Easy Rider came out. It would cost about $250,000. It made maybe $26, $27 million. I'm not sure. A very high ratio of cost to revenue. And the management of Universal decided to make 5 $1 million feature films with unknown directors, very avant-garde films, experimental films, if that was the idea. And I was lucky enough to be here and be the right time at the right place with Silent Running. And Ned Tannen liked the idea, so I had an opportunity to direct this picture.
Silent Running is really one of the sleepers of the last 20 years, and it was on my list of the 10 best films of the year.
It just seemed to me that that was an ideal kind of film because it had what you might call technological excitement, but it also had something on its mind. And I've always been very much in favor of films that seem to have something to say, and that, you know, was an early statement about the ecological mess we're making of this planet, and I've admired Mr. Trumbull ever since for doing it.
What about the forests? You don't think anyone should care about these forests? What's going to happen if these forests and all this incredible beauty is lost for all time?
I think Silent Running, for me, was really about retaining your integrity. It's really about a character who really, I mean, aside from the fact he's on a spaceship and he's preserving these forests, he's asked to do something that his conscience says is not such a good idea. And he really believes in a certain thing. He may be a little bit crazy, he may be obsessive, but he truly believes in what his goal in life is. And he says no. He says, I don't care whether my government wants me to do something different or these people I'm working with want me to do something different. I won't do this. I think Silent Running was the first job that we did together at Trumbull Film Effects in Canoga Park.
That's right.
And you did the robot arms.
Oh, on the operation on Bruce Dern's knee.
And Pop made a bunch of little attachments that they could grab so that they could have little grabbers and little tools and little cutters, and
saw.
There was a rotary, like a drill thing.
Yeah, a saw.
We were trying to make them really be personalities. Robots have always been used as malevolent characters that are going to go berserk and cut your head off or attack you or something like that. And in Silent Running, I was doing a lot of reverses in Silent Running. I had just come out of 2001, which portrayed
technology as being a very cold and sort of repellent thing, and I wanted the idea that technology in the future could still be filled with emotion and human qualities.
No, I wasn't looking. Hey, now just a minute. What have I said about talking between you guys? Now, come on, that's not fair. I'm here all by myself and you guys are talking between yourselves now. It's not fair. That's a house rule. No more talking.
And we imbued Huey and Dewey and Louie with a lot of human qualities. And I think that became one of the forerunners to R2-D2 in Star Wars.
Under motion control, this would all be coordinated with other moves.
Pop is probably the finest engineer in the movie business, doing this kind of special engineering, which requires invention and engineering and building stuff from scratch. Every movie requires totally new equipment to do the special kind of things we do.
Here we go. Oh, that's great. Camera goes like that.
I think the industry as a whole should be thankful that Douglas Trumbull was around. I believe most of them are. Because of Douglas, it's made it a lot easier for a number of people to enjoy doing what they're doing in their crafts in this medium.
Basically what we do is we have a computer that controls this camera from inside the booth there, and we'll click off a frame at a time that can take up to, say for a move like this, it can take as long as an hour, 2 hours. Our first pass is our production pass, where we have all the color and all the lights and the standard setup, which is eventually what you're going to see. And then we do a pass with a matte pass, where we light everything with a particular color. We use red, which eliminates any of the matte lines when we later put it upon the star fields.
This is probably the biggest and most sophisticated motion control system we've ever built for any movie. This was built originally for Star Trek: The Motion Picture. And it's a 65mm camera. It's able to rotate right on the lens center. It's one of the most important functions of this camera, is it can rotate on the lens center, it can tip up and down, and it can pan left and right, all under electronic control from the computer, which you can see across the room there. These movements can be exactly repeated to a 10,000th of an inch many, many times, so that each of the exposures and each of the movements match perfectly. The whole idea of motion control is to match those movements and be able to take long exposures. Sometimes it takes 10 seconds per frame to expose that image. For Brainstorm, we did 120 passes, which means exposures in the camera, on one piece of film. And like the scenes at the end of Brainstorm consisted of 750 exposures on one piece of film when the final composite was done. I've never seen anything like that before. It's great. I guess I was always influenced and impressed by science fiction films and space films. I guess some of the stuff I really enjoyed is I watched every Flash Gordon show ever made. All those old serials and all those crazy gags and the spaceships with the funny smoke coming out and the crazy noises and the completely outrageous and unbelievable special effects. I think I was very influenced by The Wizard of Oz. I think I was very influenced by almost all of the famous Disney feature-length cartoons. George Pal's War of the Worlds was terrific. I think Robert Wise's The Day the Earth Stood Still was fantastic.
It was Universal preparing to do the Andromeda Strain, and I needed somebody to do our very special effects in that film. And somebody had recommended Doug, and I looked into his background and found out how much he had contributed in 2001. He was so young then, young looking. He looked like he belonged in high school, not doing these what turned out to be most effective and highly sophisticated effects for our film.
Star Trek gave me an opportunity to continue some experiments in multiplane photography that I've been very interested in for a long time. And there was a whole sequence going through the V'ger cloud, which was a whole series of multiple exposures in space of airbrushed artwork, which was very soft and very nebulous and very sort of cosmic. completely the opposite of just stars on black backgrounds.
Doug, who had said he didn't want to do special effects anymore for anybody's film, was kind enough to step into the breach, along with John Dykstra, another fine special effects man, and the two of them split the work and got all the work done in fine shape.
The Enterprise, what we called the dry dock sequence, was a chance to do a number of different things. It was a very complex, multi-layered opticals. Every little flying vehicle and every astronaut and the Enterprise and the dry dock and the Earth and the stars were all separate photographic elements. So very complicated opticals. And one of the things that we did there, which is quite unusual, is that all the little astronauts you see floating around in space were real people shot against a blue screen and then optically reduced into the scenes. So some of the films that we've made have had little miniature astronauts, but this one was real people, you know, floating around and moving physically, and it was very, very realistic. I was very, very happy with that. We may have just one shot of this lifting up, you know, that transition shot where the blades are folding down. We're seeing that fold out of the shot. After that, just gone. What interests me is really treading on some new territory and pushing the frontiers in the same way that the very early filmmakers were finding out what was the whole process of making movies.
The motion picture business began at 16 frames a second, which was silent speed. And when they went to sound, they moved to 24 frames a second, partially because the faster moving film gave them a more appropriate speed to put sound on.
And it only took us 9 months in the first year of operation of Future General to come up with Showscan.
Now, what does Showscan do? Showscan is, first of all, moving through, it's shot and projected at 60 frames a second. So that's 2.5 times more frames per second.
The integrity of a bead of water, for example, could be seen for the first time.
We get rid of that old 24 frame per second 35 millimeter film, which I think is obsolete and inadequate. We shoot 70 millimeter film at 60 frames per second, and we project each frame of film only once instead of twice. And what it creates is this amazing illusion of clarity, because your mind and your nervous system needs 60 new pictures per second. And when you do that, the surface of the screen disappears, it becomes three-dimensional, and it's like reality, like a window.
Now, this is not just a little improvement. This is not like finding a lens that allows you to focus more sharply, or finding a film that allows you to expose more freely. This is a tenfold improvement, and if you don't believe it, all you have to do is look at Showscan and you realize that it is miles beyond anything else you've ever seen projected on a motion picture screen.
It was astounding to see the kind of depth and dynamism that came from it. I don't think I expected it to have that kind of vitality and you know, a new visual freshness.
At this point, I know of nothing else that is as exciting and as inventive and as creatively stimulating as Showscan.
Well, I think in developing Showscan, we've spent a lot of time and energy in developing a new Showscan camera. And we've had enormous amount of support from Eastman Kodak in terms of exploring new film stocks. I mean, Eastman Kodak has a very comprehensive understanding of the history of film, the whole idea of recording images on film as a technological art form. Kodak understands, obviously, and has helped us enormously. We're developing digital sound with Kodak, enormous amount of help from them to be able to put the digital soundtrack right on the film. And if you really want to see where the history of movies have gone and how involved the technology has been in the art form, you go to Eastman Kodak.
Doug, 6 weeks ago we introduced our new Eastman Color high-speed daylight negative film, 5297. And this product, which really responds very well under different lighting conditions, is being demonstrated in the film that we're seeing right now, which was shot by our people in upstate New York. It looks gorgeous.
It wasn't always easy for George Eastman. This 1923 cartoon is really making fun of him going out and trekking with all his equipment to take still photographs, sort of like what I've been doing recently. But he was a bank clerk, fascinated with photography. He was developing photographs in his mother's kitchen, but he was determined. And I don't think it was too long. I think this was really a sort of a good-humored cartoon, because it wasn't too long before they didn't make fun of George Eastman anymore. In the early days of movies, there was an enormous amount of innovation and experimentation, and the early films of Méliès and Porter followed on by films by Keaton and Chaplin, were filled with special effects, optical illusion, mirror gags, all kinds of exploration of the medium. And those were the early days when a lot of the conventions were created and built. The idea of a close-up of one person, a close-up of the other, a two-shot, a master shot, editing practices and ways of telling stories. And then there was an enormous change from black and white film to color film, and an even bigger change from silent film to talking film. It's interesting to me that the first working system for synchronizing sound to motion pictures was developed and working in 1904. And it really wasn't until 23 years later with The Jazz Singer that the public saw that you could make sound with movies. But I think in addition to that, one of the other most interesting stories is that once The Jazz Singer opened, it took less than a year to equip over 150 theaters to show sound with motion pictures for The Jazz Singer. Even more interesting, it took less than 3 years to equip 13,500 theaters for sound all over the United States. This is a photograph of the interior of a railroad car that was built by Technicolor for the processing of the first color motion pictures on location. They had to perforate the film, put the emulsion on the film, develop the film, dry the film, splice the film, project the film. Everything happened in this railroad car. And it's also interesting to note that in order for Technicolor to implement motion pictures in color, they had to build this railroad car, they had to build the cameras, and they had to actually produce the first color motion pictures themselves. And Showscan is going through the same kind of developmental period. I think it's a very natural thing. We've been producing the films ourselves, we've been making the cameras ourselves, we've been making short subjects ourselves. So history is repeating itself here, and I hope Showscan becomes as successful as color motion pictures. This is a photograph of one of the early motion picture projectors for color films. It's a kinemacolor projector. And this is one of the first Technicolor motion picture cameras. And you can see that this camera is gigantic. And this had to have 3 motion picture films running simultaneously, 1 for each primary color. But that didn't stop anybody. This is the same camera that was used to make Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz. And I think one of the most interesting stories about color in the movie industry is a story that Walt Disney was making a short subject called The Funny Bunnies, which had a big rainbow scene in it. And they all knew that it was going to cost more money because it took 3 times as much film for the 3 films that went in the camera. And they said, well, does it really make sense to shoot this film in color? Maybe we should shoot it in black and white. But the question came up, you can't shoot a movie in black and white if it's about a rainbow. So the question didn't make any sense. You had to go for color. You had to do this. The movie industry happily moved forward for about 20 years with big directors and big studios, important stars, gala premieres, and this went on very, very happily until the implementation of a new medium, which was called television. And as a reaction to television, to try to keep people coming into theaters, the movie industry said, well, let's have widescreen, let's have stereo sound. And then we got Cinerama and CinemaScope and Panavision and 70 millimeter and Todd AO. And since that time, there really haven't been any major innovations in the movie industry. There have been small innovations like Dolby Stereo, anamorphic lenses, small things, but nothing really major. There hasn't been a major innovation in the motion picture industry for 30 years.
He has a lot of energy for the filmmaking process, but it's all, 90% of that is going into dealing with the day-to-day problems of starting a brand new technology.
The problem today is that the studios are no longer competing with each other technologically. Now, in the old days, when the studios owned theaters, they had a vested interest. They not only wanted you to see their picture, but they wanted you to come to their theater, and so they wanted to be the only theater in town. Warner Brothers was the only theater in town that had sound. Paramount was the only theater in town that had VistaVision, and so forth. Today, with the divorce between the studios and the exhibitors, there's no longer that vested interest.
Is it worth the extra cost?
If I were a studio executive, I would say, okay, you want me to spend X million dollars to make this movie, where am I going to show it? What am I going to do with it when I finish with it? Show it in my basement? Build my own theater?
It's a real battle trying to bring something new and different to the marketplace.
This is my project, and I don't want to see it end up on some defense scrap heap before we know what it's really about.
The idea behind Brainstorm was that the dramatic storyline of a man who invents a device that can relive experiences was just one step away from what Showscan was all about. So that to do Brainstorm in Showscan and have that story being told, the audience would have the reaction of saying, oh, it's really happening to me right now.
I really think that the problem with Brainstorm was that it wasn't intended to be a conventional picture, and it didn't work as a conventional picture, and that shouldn't have been surprising.
It's not the film that I had planned to make. And I felt that the whole process of the way the management of the studio was operating and behaving, the way we had continued problems with the film, are similar to problems that all filmmakers go through. Making every film is some kind of miracle, and it's always like going to war.
After Brainstorm, he got pretty burnt out with mainstream Hollywood, as you know, and he started with Showscan and trying to push Showscan and get people interested, and it was this constant battle of wanting to make films in Showscan, but everybody loved Showscan, but no one wanted, you know, until there were theaters, nobody wanted to make films in Showscan, and it's this constant chasing.
When I did West Side Story, Sound of Music, Sam Pebbles in the 60s, those were what we called hard ticket shows. We sold, it was like going to the theater. You sold, people bought their tickets in advance. There were reserved seats.
I think it's going to get around to the point where people are going to say, show me what you're going to give me for my bucks. And it's going to be the things like Showscan, and certainly only Showscan now, that are going to drag us out of the house.
And I think that the effects that you get with Showscan are incomparable. I mean, I think they're more of an advance beyond what has been than CinemaScope was. CinemaScope was a slight physical change, but I think that Showscan, if I can say so, is a change in the experience of watching films.
The beauty of Showscan is that the clarity of the image is so striking and so powerful that you can see through the image. In other words, this is one process that is so strong that you can see through the process. That's maybe a little metaphysically complicated, but I know what I'm trying to say, which is that Showscan doesn't get in the way of emotional involvement.
My commitment to the Showscan process, which now runs nearly 13 years since I first invented the idea, has been driven by the fact that I finally got bored with movies as they are. And once I shot a movie in Showscan, I realized that it was really the only way to make movies. And to go back and shoot movies the old way would be totally anticlimactic and not challenging and not stimulating. And I could never go back. I could never do that.
And I would wish that Doug would stop sort of dealing with short little commercials and all this stuff and all the problems of, you know, that world, and deal with making a feature film.
Okay, so that's next, and it's... I could easily make a regular motion picture, and I've had many offers to make regular motion pictures, but I am so convinced now that it's possible to make a totally new kind of motion picture in Showscan that that's the only way I want to work. If making a commercial like this for the Chevrolet commercial is the only way I can get the money to shoot in Showscan, that's what I'm going to do. And if the only way I can shoot in Showscan is a World's Fair film, that's what I'm going to do. But I still am determined to use this as a way to getting to make feature motion pictures in Showscan. But you're going to have to keep the elbows together or something. Right.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And cut. That was great. We were both at Future General Corporation. The management of Paramount Pictures didn't know what to do with us. We're about to close the company down when Close Encounters came along, right just shortly after Star Wars, and we had turned Star Wars down because we felt we'd sort of done that before with 2001 and Silent Running. I mean, I felt that although it was definitely interrupting me from working on Showscan, that the opportunity of working with Steven Spielberg was something I really didn't want to miss. And creatively, Close Encounters was a fantastic opportunity to do things, and it also gave us an opportunity to build up a tremendous amount of 70mm equipment, which was also critical to the development of Showscan. So in a way, it interrupted it, but it also helped. Well, I think in Close Encounters, some of the sequences that are actually most interesting to me, other than the mothership, which I'm very proud of, is the UFOs themselves.
was quite fun working for Steven Spielberg, and Steven and Douglas together were dangerous. There was no telling what they were going to do. But that's always fun. It's not too much fun to work for someone that's easy to please. They were, in a sense, not easy to please.
The thing that Dick and I have done together, which I'd say has had some of its best moments in Close Encounters and Blade Runner, actually, in terms of effects, is a combination of ideas that have to do with lens flares and photographic phenomena to try to create a very strong feeling of realism, combined with the ability to take those elements and put them through post-production optical printing in a way that'll retain all those magical, soft nuances of photography in a completely seamless way.
Well, there certainly is a style in Close Encounters that I've always been awed by, actually, and I think that there was a style in Star Wars that was probably more dictated by the technology that we had available.
But on the Collector, which is really our first time we worked together, it's blue screen through and through.
It enables one to put together sandwiches of images that can go many layers deep.
Blue screen gives you a very clean, hard-edged matte if you happen to have a foreground object against a background with no soft blends between the two. And just because of the nature of Close Encounters, that didn't work. The technique effects for Star Wars were not appropriate to Close Encounters.
I find special effects to be the sort of razor's edge of photography, and the most difficult aspects of photography, I think, are encountered in at least in terms of creative applications.
Well, John, this is the new 65 Showscan camera. It'll do any frame rate, normal 24 or 60 or anywhere in between. It's crystal sync, spinning mirror reflex, self-blimped, 1,000-foot, 500-foot magazines, all new lenses. It fits on regular heads, regular dollies. You can do anything with this camera that you would do on any production.
It's a beauty.
Would you like to place an order?
Yeah. Well, we want to rent this camera.
Absolutely. We'll rent them to you, sell them to you.
Great.
Right now, there aren't any up-to-date 65mm cameras, and we've had to use old 1960s equipment. So we decided to build a totally new, state-of-the-art camera, and Cinema Products in Los Angeles have engineered our new CP65 camera with the latest lenses and motors and materials. It's important because feature film cameramen insist on the best possible quality.
Douglas has been going ahead and making the Showscan camera, which is an amazingly fine production camera.
One evening after we'd finished shooting on the Chevy Collector commercial, I decided to try using the Aliens to demonstrate the new CP65 camera and show how it works. This is the Showscan engineering workshop where we're now testing some large platter systems which make it possible to show a 2-hour feature film in Showscan with one platter system like this and one Showscan projector. So what you're seeing is the film is feeding off of this platter, going into the projector, coming back and feeding onto this platter. So it's one continuous 2-hour movie. This is the Showscan projector. This is a 7,000-watt ORC lamp house. This is a standard Century 70mm projector that's been converted for Showscan operation. This is not the electronic projector. This is a workhorse that's been operating in the movie business for 50 years. It's very trusted by projectionists worldwide. Here in the BC Pavilion Theater at Expo 86, I think is probably the finest example of a theater that I know of. This is a Showscan theater with a 65-foot screen. It's about 32, 31 feet high. It's a standard vinyl screen. It's perforated like any other theater, but the size of this screen the height and the width is just so much greater than a regular theater, you can see how the image fills your field of view. And you'll also see in this theater that the seating is much more steeply raked so that you're not looking into the back of people's heads. The projection booth is mounted in the perfect position to be able to give a perfect reconstruction of perspective and reality on the screen.
It's a 6-track, discrete 6-track system, which allows the music, certainly, to come out of one of 6 sound sources, and you can rotate sounds in the room, and you can do things, and the fidelity is so marvelous in Showscan.
And he's really refined it. It's now a real bona fide system, and it's ready for the world.
What seems a reasonable cost, the conversion cost of the cinema, was less than I imagined it was going to be. And what is also good is the fact that they can convert back again to a regular system.
I don't know of a single exhibitor who feels he doesn't want to have Showscan.
Seeing how you can adapt the projectors and the theaters, it does seem a very viable and commercial proposition.
It's awfully difficult to raise the money to make a feature film when you don't have any outlet and any distribution, and yet it's, as you say, it's difficult for anybody to put money into a theater if they don't have a feature.
Once a studio commits to making a Showscan movie, there are going to be exhibitors in all the big cities in the country, certainly, who will want to be the exhibitor to show that movie.
I think with the right picture, it would absolutely be worth taking the shot.
A studio executive who wanted to make a movie in Showscan would have to decide for himself that there was money to be made in it.
I've really spent a lot of time with Showscan now because I've become so frustrated with the movie medium as it is. It can't record the kind of things I have in my head.
Please prepare to audit the automatic speaker calibration sequence. Screen light, screen center, screen left, right rear surround, right rear surround. Full speaker system test.
Ready? Roll tape and action. Whoa.
This Showscan television commercial needed aliens that really seemed to be alive. And using the bunraku puppet technique, which has been used traditionally in Japan for hundreds of years, we developed a full-size version so that the creatures very realistically move in direct proportion to the movements of the operators, so that when the opticals are completed and the operators are optically removed, the effect is very, very believable.
Okay, number 1, move to your right about a foot. Just another 3 inches. Whoa. I think we should shoot.
Let's go. Back to 1, please. Stand by.
Now, you guys remember, on your planet you may be a big deal, but here on Earth you are slime.
And let's slime them, please. Right now. We're going to shoot.
There, number 1.
The low 10 here. 16.
Woo! Woo! Go up to the position we tried out a little bit earlier and just stand there and relax, and it's going to take me a few minutes to get this set up.
Okay, I'll wait for you.
I just hope we can get this before this light runs out. Although I've grown into a lot of work that involves huge crews of 60 and 70 people and a large cast and millions of dollars of production and elaborate set construction. I also get a lot of pleasure out of doing things myself and being able to see some project or some process through, from the idea to the photography to the film developing to the printing to the final product. And I think it's being able to occasionally come out to a place like this and do something very, very simple and see it all the way through that it allows me to sort of keep my bearings and not lose track of the fact that movies are really a photographic art form. Okay, I'm going to shoot this, D. Okay. Right there, that's great. Gotcha. I think if somebody is really going to do something more than just repeat himself and to keep cranking out movies or keep making science fiction films or keep making westerns or any of the things that we can get obsessed with in this town, you've got to get away and you've got to think and you've got to try to freshen your mind and you've got to give yourself an opportunity for something new to come in. That's better. That's better. Yeah, that looks good. Got it. So I get two things out of going to the country. One is being alone and just enjoying it for itself, but the other is I get a chance to think, and it gives me a chance to come up with some new ideas and some different ideas. I think the movie industry might be a little bit smug about World's Fairs and sort of think of this as a circus and something that's really not very serious art. But what's really happening here is World's Fairs are where things are seen first. This is a double 70mm 3D movie theater right here at the Ontario Pavilion. Over here on this side is the Omnimax Theater, which is 15 perforation 70mm film shown in a giant planetarium-like environment. Very large screen, very wide picture, very spectacular. This is the Canadian Pavilion where we have there's a multimedia slideshow in here. There's a Showscan Earthwatch Theater with the first large screen, fully automated electronic Showscan projector. There's IMAX 3D, which is two 70mm 15 perforation 3D images superimposed for 3D on a very large screen out at the end of the pavilion. This is the British Columbia Pavilion where we have the Showscan film. This is a, I don't know, $15, $20 million building. Fortunately, the Showscan Theater is a permanent building where the rest of these only exist for 6 months and then they're torn down. But I think the most important thing that's happening at a World's Fair is that this is where you see it first. This is where new things are revealed to the public. This is where you're going to see what's going on culturally, what's going on technologically, and you're going to see many, many, many millions of dollars spent on projects like this. I think the most important thing that I'd like to see happen in World's Fairs in the future is that if major motion picture directors, international directors of major importance and creativity participated in each of these pavilions, you'd really have a film festival par excellence. This would be where it would be at, movie-wise, on this planet.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, all of the Showscan tickets have been sold out for today. As long as you have a yellow Showscan ticket, you will be admitted at the time on your ticket. If you don't have a Showscan ticket, you can try getting a ticket in our standby line. 今日の Showscan のセール券は全部配っております。もし11時40分の切符お持ちの方は
Have you seen this more than one time?
This is my third time.
This is your third time. Do you know anybody who's seen it 3 times or more times?
My pals here.
Doug? Vic?
Yeah, we've both seen it before and we're coming back. We've enjoyed it so much.
How many times have you seen it?
Twice.
Have you got any friends who've seen it more times than that, or?
Yeah, I know someone who's seen it 8 times.
What did you think? How many times have you seen it?
3.
3 times?
Yeah, it's great.
Thank you.
It's great fun.
Fantastic. Would you guys like to see a feature film made this way?
Yes.
I'd come back again. It was beautiful.
Thank you.
It wasn't long enough.
People's reactions when they come out are usually such that, well, now that I've seen this, I don't have to see anything else.
These dynamically moving seats are really a rather extreme application of the Showscan process. We We found that the Showscan is so realistic that we can couple it with this kind of motion and create a very intense feeling of involvement. You can only take a ride like this for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. The Tour of the Universe project in Toronto is a different kind of simulation where we're using an L1011 747 type flight simulator that's holding 40 people. This holds 8 people at a time. I wouldn't call dynamically moving seats dramatic filmmaking, and I certainly wouldn't ask Steven Spielberg or anybody to be involved in making a film where the seats are jerking around. My real love is still feature motion pictures and drama and characterizations and plot and action and all the things that more serious filmmaking is about, which is really where my heart is in using Showscan.
The interesting thing about Showscan is I think that it has a great flexibility.
I think it's open to almost anything. I think the beginning should be grand and very adventurous.
I think it needs a picture of tremendous scope to properly use it. It would be a shame to waste it on some kind of small internal drama.
I think done right, you know, a very intimate love scene in Showscan can be as mind-boggling as a man flying from here to Krypton.
I think it'd be a shame for Douglas to stop now because I think he's so close to breaking through.
It took 13 years to get paper diapers launched in this country. It took somewhere between 7 and 10 years to get zippers put on clothing.
The key to Showscan is to show it to people.
I'm very used to the idea that this is a natural process we're going through here. It does take time for people to see it, get used to it, talk to each other, say, is that a good idea, is that not a good idea? It takes a while to gather consensus.
Blue Thunder would have been terrific in Showscan. That would have been the absolute best.
And I wish they got a shot Top Gun on this.
I think you'd have probably had to cart him out of the theater on gurneys if you were to shoot Star Wars in Showscan.
Gandhi would have looked magnificent in Showscan, there's just no question about it.
I think Raiders would have been amazing. I think Poltergeist would have been scarier.
I was talking very seriously to Doug about Showscan when I started Superman.
2010 would have been wonderful. Ghostbusters would have been outrageous.
I think a movie like Out of Africa, with all of its epic photography of Africa, would have been very effective in Showscan.
I would like to do the first Showscan film.
I'm sure that I would spend $10 or $15 to see a Showscan movie.
The bottom line in any movie process like Showscan or in the movie business in general is, do people like it? Will they come to see it? Will they come in greater numbers? Will they pay more? Will they see it longer? Will they tell their friends? So the proof of the pudding is how the people react. And I think that's one of the wonderful things that's happening here at the Expo 86.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would ask that everybody coming out of the 2 doors that are closest to myself, please walk right across the
I think there's an opportunity with Showscan to dramatically increase the numbers of people who come to theaters to see motion pictures. Instead of it continuously falling off and eroding to television, I think it can continuously build back up. I think it could be double or triple what it is today.
I will give you 60 pictures per second in 70 millimeter.
You know, Godard said that cinema is truth at 24 frames a second. So you could say that Showscan is greater truth at 60 frames a second.
I just think that the opportunities for the future are unlimited and dramatically different from anything that we presently know today. I think I've always been pushing to try to create experience, not so much a story or a plot or a joke or a drama, but to actually take the audience somewhere. And I want to go there too.